Hi, I'm Pablo, and in the next few minutes, I want to share with you the latest news about our solution for creating super apps and mini apps. I'll demonstrate how this technology is transforming the future of applications, making them more modular and responsive to the evolving needs of both users and companies. To start, I'd like to review the progress of some of the significant projects currently utilizing this super apps technology. As we often say, this is a technology that's truly battle tested, as it's already being implemented in high exposure applications across various demanding industries. So let's dive into the progress of projects that are live in production, as well as others in advanced stages of development, where we can see the impact they're having on the efficiency and flexibility of app ecosystems today. Uruguay's Banco Itaú led the way as the first to transform its native application, originally developed for both Android and iOS, into a super app. The goal was to gradually provide customers with an enhanced, integrated shopping experience for products and services offered by its primary business partners, all within a single, user-friendly platform. This transformation allows Banco Itaú to adapt more readily to user needs and expand its service offerings, positioning it as an innovator in digital banking solutions in the region. This is how the bank then began this transformation project, incorporating the super app render into its native application and developing the first mini apps. The bank user could buy through the super app movie tickets, tickets to sporting events, and purchases of products from a retail chain. See, this project has been evolving, and in the last few months, new stores and services have been added to the super app. Today, users can make purchases at restaurants, ticket purchases, and also in products from abroad at discounted prices through the super app. The mini apps are applications that were developed with GeneXus. What was done was to develop the front end of these applications using GeneXus and accessing the back end and all the APIs that these businesses already had for the services they were currently providing. As we can see, the interfaces in the super app are customized for each store, preserving the unique systems and designs of each one. This tailored approach ensures that users experience a familiar layout while navigating within the super app. However, there are specific points where the super app directly interacts with each store. For example, why might an Itaú user purchasing a movie ticket prefer to do so through the super app rather than through the theater's website or app? The essence of super apps is to provide users with a streamlined, low-friction approach to achieving their goals across various services. To illustrate this concept more clearly, let's explore the architecture behind this solution. A super app will then have the possibility, from the incorporation of the super app render, to load new mini apps, to access new mini apps. These mini apps are going to be loaded in a totally dynamic way when the user discovery mechanism, such as search, selection, proximity to a store, etc. These mini apps will be loaded dynamically when the user selects them. These mini apps will be displayed in the context of the super app and through the super app render, which is this module that you incorporate in your super app project. The mini app will be loaded and rendered in a totally dynamic way at that moment. The user can move through various flows on the screen and at any moment has the option to close the mini app, instantly returning to the main super app interface without losing context. A key aspect of this solution is that the super app offers an API and a series of services specifically for the mini apps, allowing them to access essential data and resources. This setup enables a smoother, more personalized user experience, integrating each mini app flow more naturally into the broader super app ecosystem. Let's see the example in the case of Itaú. When the user goes through the purchase flow, at a certain moment, the merchant can provide different prices depending on the cards that the user has from the bank. If it is a debit card, it may have a discount. If it is a credit card, another discount, or different affinity programs that the user has through those cards. Affinity programs that the user has through those cards, the prices could vary. Then we can show in that purchase flow a price that suits the cards that the user has. So all the mini app has to do in the development is ask the super app through the API that the super app exposes what are, in this case, the types of cards that the user has. Then we can show a very differential price that fits that user. At the payment stage, as shown, the user navigates through mini app screens. However, when they select the checkout option, the process seamlessly calls an API provided by the super app, directing the user to a dedicated payment screen within the super app itself. This payment screen manages the connection to the payment gateway, recognizes which payment methods or cards the user has on file, and securely processes the transaction. Once the payment is completed, control returns to the mini app to allow the user to finish the remaining steps of their flow, ensuring a cohesive, secure, and uninterrupted experience. With this, what we achieve is that the super app can then offer through these API entry points, connection points, points of interaction between the mini app and the super app, so that the flow is much more customizable and much simpler for the user. So buying a ticket or buying food or buying a ticket through the super app will be much easier for the Itaú user than doing it externally. Now, this doesn't just apply to financial application scenarios as this project is. There are already several projects that are working with this solution. The second one I want to tell you about is a project at the internal corporate level. Let's say Start Me Up is a dynamic platform that enhances the experience of collaborators within an organization. What we have here is that the users, the collaborators of a company, can access information about career plans, evaluations, information about projects, share information, evaluations that we do within the teams. All this is done through this platform, which is a platform that Globant uses internally. And today, more than 30,000 Globers have this application installed on their devices or accessed through the web platform to achieve that level of interaction between the different collaborators. This application arose internally within Globant, but obviously it made sense to use it in the context of any organization, and today it is a marketable product that Globant offers so that they can install it within their companies. What Globant decided in this case is, or at least the need that arose, was to add new services within this application that made sense within Globant, but perhaps not for other organizations. Today, as I was saying, it is an application used by 30,000 Globers, so having the possibility to get additional services, for example, in the case of a Glober when he needs to go to work in any office, any of the offices in the more than 30 countries that Globant has, to go to work in that place, what he does is to reserve that workspace, reserve that desk, let's say, to be able to access and have it available when he wants to go. Today, that is done through a mini app. What they decided then is to transform their application into a super app, incorporating the render to be able to add those services that make sense to the Globers community. One is then the possibility to reserve a seat in one of Globant's offices. There are additional mini apps designed specifically for handling various approvals, such as purchase and licensing approvals, tailored for managerial roles. These mini apps will only be visible to users with the appropriate authority, providing them with a streamlined interface to easily manage and process approvals within the super app. And another mini app that is being developed is for the management of invitations. When we invite customers, partners, or any invitation to any of Globant's offices, what is done then through an agenda system, that space is reserved, an invitation email is sent with an access QR code to that person to be able to enter the offices. All this is done through mini applications, which are applications, as I said, totally independent from the core of the main application. So this application can be maintained in some way without being affected by these services that are particular to this sector, to this company. The third case I would like to mention is the company Duxa, which is the fuel distributor in Uruguay, together with the company Matrix, is carrying out the digital transformation of one of its applications used for customer loyalty. Duxa is not only in charge of the distribution of fuel in the almost 300 service stations that are throughout Uruguay, but it is also in charge or has bet on technology to optimize service times at the stations and improve the shopping experience of users and also its customers. In this sense, one of the applications being developed by Duxa is ANCAP. It is an application where users can accumulate points when they go to put fuel in the car or in the trucks, which also have a whole program of benefits. There is a whole loyalty program. That application was developed in a technology that was becoming obsolete, and it was then that Duxa decided to transform that application. There it adopted GeneXus, and this is one of the first super apps applications developed entirely with GeneXus. And in this process of digital transformation, they also decided that the application should be a super app from the beginning. That is, to think of it as a super app even without knowing if they were really going to have an ecosystem of mini apps at the beginning, but they wanted to start thinking of this solution as a modular solution. That was how the process started, and then they saw that in that transformation there were several services that were within the core application that could be extracted and start presenting them as mini apps. That is, they were no longer part of the main application but mini apps. So today the application services that were previously integrated, such as, for example, the purchase of Supergas or all the benefits program for the customer loyalty program, are no longer part of the core application, but are mini apps that are also developed with GeneXus technology. The other case I want to tell you about is a very different sector, a public sector in the government, which also decided through AGESIC, which is the Agency for the Development of Government Electronic Management. The goal was to transform their current application, gov.ui, into a super app that streamlines access to government services for citizens. Developed in React Native, they integrated GeneXus render to simplify and personalize the experience. Currently, when a citizen needs to complete a procedure, they must navigate through a multitude of options on various government websites, which can make the process time-consuming and complex. While many of these services are available online, the goal of the Super App is to elevate accessibility by delivering relevant services based on personalized factors, such as the citizen's location, employment status, or particular needs, allowing for a more efficient, citizen-centric experience. This approach ensures that relevant services are directly accessible, offering a smoother, more intuitive interaction with government procedures. So, the process was to transform that application into the Super App and develop the first mini apps to start testing this whole ecosystem. Today, the mini apps that are about to go into production are one for obtaining the national identity card, another one for the agenda and management of passports, and a third one for obtaining judicial background certificates, which is a document used for other procedures. These services, as in the previous cases, are services that are being incorporated as modules to the main application. The great advantage of this solution is that there are cross-cutting services to all the mini apps, such as, for example, payment. Several of these services that are being incorporated require a payment to be made, or, for example, the sending of notifications or the management of the agenda and other services that these transversal services will be implemented on the Super App side. So this, in a way, greatly simplifies the incorporation of new mini apps because the development of these mini apps is simplified. There are already functionalities that are more of the core of the Super App that will be provided by the Super App through its API. The mini app simplifies development in many ways, and from the user's perspective, it also enhances security. This is because key management processes, such as identity management, are handled entirely on the Super App side using an identity provider like ID Uruguay. Each mini app is automatically logged in for the user through a single sign-on mechanism, facilitated by the Super App's connection to obtain the user's identity. This centralized approach streamlines the user experience, ensuring that they don't have to log in multiple times. Additionally, the Super App exposes nearly 40 entry points via its API, making the integration process for each mini app much easier and more secure. All these scenarios share a common theme, and what we're observing aligns with what Gartner is also discussing: composable or modular applications. In essence, we are transitioning to a business ecosystem where applications are built by adding different services as individual modules. This modular approach enables greater flexibility, allowing organizations to easily integrate, update, or scale services according to their specific needs, creating a more dynamic and customizable business environment. This has several advantages, not only for the development of the solution itself, but also for the end user. Let's look at some of these advantages. The fact that it is modular allows the development, updating, and management of these services to be developed completely independently, but easily integrated with the Super App. And that also gives scalability in the sense that we can add new services to our main application without affecting the core of the application, without affecting the distribution development in the main application. And those additional services can be adapted according to the user's needs. Even what has to do with the experience we want to provide can be as different as we want. It doesn't have to be all uniform. On the other hand, it also gives you much more flexibility because it allows you to integrate third-party services. That is, they don't necessarily have to be proprietary services, as we saw in some cases. In the case of Start Me Up, was an entire corporate application, and therefore all the services are practically internal. The case of Itaú is a case of the other extreme, where the services are all commercial and therefore are all external, developed by third parties or a mix, as in the case of gov.ui, where the first services are developed by the agency. But then we are going to see that the different ministries or different public entities can start adding new services, new mini apps. On the other hand, it simplifies the time to market because we can quickly, In addition, to outsource the development, incorporate those mini apps, those services within our main application very quickly without requiring the super app to be recompiled and republished in the different stores. Simply once the mini app is approved by the owner of the super app, turn it on or off through the back office that manages all the mini apps. And the other big advantage for the end user, which allows a high customization of the solution, because the user can then perform that action, execute that service, make that purchase in a much simpler, much more dynamic way with much less friction. Another significant advantage for the end user is the high degree of customization it offers. This level of personalization empowers the user to seamlessly execute actions, access services, or make purchases in a much more straightforward and dynamic manner. By minimizing friction throughout the process, the solution enhances the overall user experience, allowing for greater convenience and satisfaction. Furthermore, this ease of use not only saves time, but also fosters a more engaging and efficient interaction with the platform, meeting the user's unique needs more effectively. On the one hand, the development of the super app or the conversion of the super app in case you already have an application that you want to transform into a super app, an application that can be native or developed with a framework, React Native or Flutter. Today, that application can be quickly and easily transformed into a super app, or alternatively, developed from scratch as a super app. Another component is the Mini App Center, which serves as the web-based back office for managing everything related to mini apps. In this center, companies can send invitations to develop a mini app for their super app, making it a hub for the entire development and management process. It is where mini apps are published and made available to the super app owner for testing. All these steps, from creation to testing and final deployment, are efficiently handled through this intuitive web back office. And the third component is the actual development of the mini apps. Obviously, for all of this to make sense, I have to be able to quickly and simply develop those mini apps. Let's see then the best in each of these components. What is the super app render? Several improvements were made in what it has to do with the handling of interactions between the mini app and the super app. Remember that what the render does is to load and render a metadata inside the main application. And therefore, we worked on improvements in what is the interaction, especially when activities or screens of the mini app calling screens of the super app are involved. Several optimization processes and code improvements were made. The other feature that was incorporated on the super app side is the possibility of bringing the mini apps from the mini app center in a different way. What do I mean by this? When the super app queries or is going to show the mini apps that are suitable for that user, it queries the mini app center through the provisioning API. Which mini apps are approved and available to present to the user? Until now, there were different mechanisms, basically 3 methods, to obtain this list of mini apps from the mini app center provisioning, where all the approved mini apps are, but that are in a certain range, determined, let's say, depending on the geographical position of the user. This would serve, for example, to show those mini apps that are close to the user from physical stores that would be nearby. Then you could show those mini apps in the super app. Or, for example, bring the mini apps that were marked as featured. I want to highlight some mini apps at some point in the year, I don't know, holidays, vacations, etc., that I want to make relevant to the user. Then I can somehow mark them as relevant and then be able to query from the super app those mini apps that are marked that way. What has been done now is to add another method, which is to be able to bring the mini apps by certain dynamic filters. What is this for? Imagine that you have a super app that is used in several countries and there are mini apps within that ecosystem, but we do not want them to be available for everyone. But there are some mini apps that we want to be available for people who live in Uruguay, Argentina, and other different ones, for those who live, for example, in Brazil. What we can do today, when defining a super app in the mini app center, is add what we refer to as attributes or dynamic categories. These allow for a more flexible and customizable configuration, enhancing the functionality and user experience of the super app. One of those categories in this example would be country, and that means that when someone is going to upload a mini app for that super app, she will have to somehow load or instantiate those country values. In this case, as we had defined the country, when uploading the mini app, we have to say, well, I want this mini app to apply to Uruguay, Argentina, and so on. This means that when we consult or get the list of mini apps from the super app, we can pass this filter to it. So just imagine, according to the context information of the user that gave it to you or the profile that you have defined, you can then bring a personalized list of mini apps tailored specifically to that individual user. And the third point, and this already applies to non-GeneXus super apps, is the facility we are giving today to be able to integrate the super app render in your projects. The super app render, both for Android and iOS, is as a package in the standard repositories used by these platforms. For Android, you use Maven Central, and for iOS, you use Swift packages. So today you have a very simple way to integrate this module, which is the super app render, into your super app. As for the mini app center, well, there are several improvements that have to do with the usability part, depending on the role that enters this back office web. If it is a mini app developer, if it is the reviewer of a super app, etc. Well, the options that you are going to see now are much more user-friendly. It's clearer, let's say, the flow that a mini app is going through, if it's in review status, if it's in approval status, if it's in production, how can I do to easily revert it so that it's no longer available to users. All this was changed to make the use of the back office web much more user-friendly. We also worked on a back office API so that we can perform several of the actions that we do today through the web console, to be able to do them through scripts or programmatically. Now we are going to see an example of that. Then what we also did was to work on making the mini app center multi-language. In fact, it is already in Spanish, English, and Japanese, and we can easily add other languages. And the last thing we were also working hard on was the Mini App Center CDK. Today, we have the Mini App Center as a script. Today, we have a CDK for Amazon so that you can install it on your own on-premise infrastructure. We have already tested the CDK, and what this script does is to assemble the entire architecture of this application, in this case in Amazon Web Services, taking advantage of all the products and benefits that Amazon Web Services has. For example, for everything related to file management, an S3 is created, the database in an RDS, an API gateway for the provisioning of the mini apps, etc. All this is created automatically through the CDK. What we did was to add improvements in what has to do with security and scalability, taking into account the recommendations that Amazon is including in its latest versions. And finally, the development of the mini apps. Here we have been working on two main fronts. On the one hand, meeting the demand of our users who wanted to somehow to make the inclusion of new mini apps much faster and more dynamic. We have been working on the possibility of supporting web mini apps. So far, the mini apps are native apps that must be developed using GeneXus technology. As I mentioned earlier, it's not necessary to build the entire mini app from scratch. Only the front end needs to be created. The back end and APIs may already be available in other applications. So with GeneXus, our main task is to develop the front end, which is what ensures the mini app is rendered natively within the super app. This approach streamlines the development process while maintaining seamless integration within the larger ecosystem. But now what we did was also support web mini apps, and those web mini apps can be developed with any web technology, not necessarily with GeneXus. Basically, the rendering there, when we load a mini app of this type, of web type, what it will do is to present a kind of web view inside the super app and also define a channel, a JavaScript channel. It is a JavaScript bridge for the communication of that mini app with the API that the super app exposes for the whole mini app. So I can have an API with functionalities such as the case of paying or accessing user information, which is going to be the same in both the native and web mini app. In the case of web, the render is going to define that JavaScript communication channel so that the web mini app can call those functions of the super app. But on the other hand, we have been working hard on simplifying the development of mini apps with GeneXus, native mini apps. Developing a mini app with GeneXus is essentially the same as developing a regular app using GeneXus, meaning it doesn't introduce any additional complexity. In fact, in certain cases where there are specific differences compared to developing a standalone app, we've added special features to simplify the process. This ensures that creating mini apps remains efficient and user-friendly, without compromising on functionality or ease of development. Let's review a little bit what is the development cycle of an app with GeneXus and the advantages that GeneXus offers. On the design side, we have the Design Assistant, where designers can very quickly and easily create a design of a new application. We can use the same for the case of mini apps. For the development of the solution, we have GeneXus. We already know it with low-code technology. We can, through a single definition of the model, generate our application for both Android and iOS, with all the advantages that we already know about GeneXus, the ones we are going to see throughout this event and the ones we are going to see in the next version, which simplifies and speeds up the development of the solution. Then comes the testing stage. In GeneXus, we already have tools such as UI test or unit tests to test our application during the development cycle of the solution. Here what we add is because there is a moment, let's say, when we are developing the mini app that we have to integrate with the super app. I mean, if the super app provides us with an API with certain functions, such as getting user information, get information from the user, make the payment, etc. The examples we saw before. At some point, as the developer of that mini app, I will want to integrate or start adding the code that will communicate with the super app. Today, during the development stage of the mini app, I can work on it independently without needing the super app. In other words, I can develop the mini app without requiring the super app as the environment in which the mini app will run. For this, we created what we call the super app mock. That is to say, in our knowledge base where we are developing the mini app, we can create a mock of the super app, implement the functions that the super app exposes. The names of the functions are already given because the owner of the super app provides them to me. It tells me which methods are going to be available. What I'm going to do in my knowledge base is to add a mock of those functions. If it is a screen, call a minimal panel that simulates the screen of the super app. If it's a service that provides user information, it will be a procedure or a data provider that returns the data in a way that allows me to test the mini app using the super app's API, all within my development environment. I can conduct all tests in my own environment. Once I publish the mini app in the mini app center, the same mini app will then call the methods of the real super app when it goes live. And the advantage of this solution is that it doesn't involve changing any lines of code. The same thing that I have developed to call the mock during the development environment, in the production environment, that same code will now call the functions of the real super app. The last 2 points is the deployment of the solution. There, with GeneXus, we already have the deploy application for the mini app services layer, the mini app backend. We can continue using the same deploy tools that we have today for all the deploy options that GeneXus offers, whether in the cloud, locally, etc. And what we add now is the deploy of the front end of that application, of the metadata of that mini app. Until now, in a standalone application, a mobile application, we deployed the service layer, the backend, and what we did was to compile the front end in Android and iOS and then publish it in the Apple Store or Google Play. In the case of the mini app, this step is not necessary. It is not necessary neither to compile the application nor to publish it in the store. What I need to do is publish it in the mini app center, and we can streamline this process through our continuous integration and continuous delivery pipeline. We can add a script using the API that I mentioned today from the mini app back office to automate the deployment of that mini app in the mini app center, which automatically becomes available for testing from the super app. The final point is that once the mini app is published in the mini app center, it must be possible to test it from within the super app. This testing capability should be available not only to the developer, but also to the super app owner, who may want to test the mini app within their own solution directly from their super app. And there what we have is what we call the sandbox mode. This feature allows a super app to upload a mini app without the need to publish it. In other words, by using a QR code provided by the mini app center when the mini app is published, I can directly load the mini app into the super app and test it in an environment that closely mirrors the real one. This ensures that the mini app will interact with the actual API of the super app, providing a more accurate and realistic testing experience. In a way, in the whole development cycle of a mini app, we take all the advantages of GeneXus and add new facilities, let's say, to make it fast. Well, this is a little bit of what I wanted to tell you about in terms of the news that we have both on the product side and on the projects that they are already working on with our solution. And on the other hand, what I want to tell you or start thinking about, let's say, is how the advent of artificial intelligence, how it is going to change the way we are going to develop these types of applications and how users are going to use these types of applications. We believe that artificial intelligence is somehow going to empower this super app model, that it is going to act more like the super app is going to start acting more like an orchestrator of those intentions that the user declares. And from those intentions are going to trigger new services or the corresponding services, that those are then going to be the mini apps. That is to say, somehow it is going to change how the user interacts with those applications. Imagine this scenario where I have a super app with mini apps, as we saw so far. But now I have an assistant that is connected to Globant Enterprise AI, where through Globant Enterprise AI, I can define assistants for both the super app and the mini apps. Then I could have an assistant that guides me on how to train it with prompts that specify the kinds of responses this application can give and the types of services it offers to users. Based on the ongoing conversation, another assistant can seamlessly pick up the communication flow without interruption. For example, if the assistant detects that the user wants to order food or buy movie tickets, it can take that information and guide the user to the appropriate mini app. This mini app will then take over, leading the user step by step to accomplish their goal, whether it's placing a food order, purchasing a ticket, or even browsing related offers, ensuring a smooth, cohesive experience that feels natural and uninterrupted. This transition makes the user feel as if they are interacting with a single, intelligent entity across various tasks. And the great thing about this modular system of super apps is that while the conversation can continue to happen with the user to get the information needed to, in this case, for example, buy a movie ticket, at a certain point I have to interact with the application, for example, to select the seat in a movie theater or to confirm the purchase. And at that moment then, what the assistant could do is to raise that service, that mini app, in a fully automatic and dynamic way so that the user then, through a more structured interface, can then complete the purchase. So in a way, this is going to change the way users are going to interact with these applications. Here, for example, I am showing in Globant Enterprise AI how we can define these flows. We say, well, we have a main assistant that is the one that serves the user, and then we have other assistants that are conditioned there that, depending on what the main assistant determines, indicates which mini app I have to continue talking to. So there we see on the right side in that flow that I start by ask request to see what movies are available on the weekend to go to the movies. The cinema assistant, in this case the cinema mini app, starts to answer me. It guides me through the purchase process, but in the middle of the conversation I say, oh no, I'm late and I want to buy something for dinner. And it automatically detects that now I have to talk to the assistant that solves the part of ordering meals, in this case from Rudy's application, and then I follow the flow of the assistant to request that order, and so on and so forth, until at one point then I can pull up that mini app and be done with that purchase flow. By adopting the super apps model, we are not only simplifying access to services, but also creating personalized experiences that anticipate user need, all powered by artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, coupled with this modular super apps model, invites us to rethink how we can offer innovative experiences that make a difference to our users. Thank you very much.